Today on the podcast, we're doing something a little different where instead of me being the host, I am being joined by a new host, and I will be the subject of the interview. We're going to go through my background in cryptocurrency, my take on the market, where is all of this blockchain development headed. And the guest host for today's podcast is actually my wife, and so she has been through my entire cryptocurrency journey with me. And Lindsay, welcome to the BSC News Podcast.
You're listening to the BSC News Podcast, the leader in decentralized finance on the Binance Smart Chain. Here's your host, Ben Antes.
It's so good to be here.
Right? I guess I should be saying thank you for having me on. It's great to be here as well.
You're very welcome. So I feel like we need to give a little background. The background is we had this idea based on some misinformation floating around Twitter amongst people who are not familiar with cryptocurrency or are only tangentially familiar with cryptocurrency and have no idea what it is or how it works, which I personally relate to a lot because I've been listening to crypto related things for years now, and I still feel like I don't understand it. So we're going to go through basically crypto for dummies. And
All right.
I want you to explain everything to me like I'm 5. Like I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you do that?
I will try my best.
You don't sound very confident. Okay. So firstly, I want to start with your background. How did you discover crypto? When did you discover crypto? How did you end up in this sphere to begin with?
So in 2013, I actually came across Bitcoin mining, and back then you could mine with a laptop. And so I didn't really understand at all what it was. But I mined for a day or two with my laptop, and then I was like, this is stupid, which in hindsight was a regret.
Wait a minute. You mined Bitcoin in 2013 with your laptop?
Yeah, so we had Bitcoin somewhere, and I have no idea how to use it.
You saw my wheels turning.
I've tried. I don't know how it even worked. I don't know what program I used. I think it was like web hosted.
Cool.
So I probably mined Bitcoin and some company ended up taking it, is my guess, or it's just part of the trapped amount of Bitcoin that no one has access to. And I have no idea if it's a quarter of a Bitcoin or 5 Bitcoin or what. So.
That's mildly disappointing. Okay, sorry to interrupt you. Continue.
So then I was like, this is stupid. And now I guess fast forward to 2017, like late 2017. And it was showing up again because Bitcoin was pumping like crazy. And so I was like, okay, this is interesting again, right? I'll pay attention to this. And I actually bought XRP during that just euphoria phase. And
what is XRP?
Ripple.
Okay.
It's just another cryptocurrency.
Okay.
And it pumped really well for a little while, but we didn't put much money in. This is like right after we got married.
Oh.
And,
okay.
And then it all fell apart again. But then I started learning, so now it's going to the beginning of 2018. And within that few months of, I got interested again. I started, if you remember, mining Aetherium and Ravencoin in my office.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to pay for electricity. So that was a good move.
Yeah.
And then it just became like an obsession, would be the easiest descriptive term, so I was mining, and to me it was all about how do I make money off of this? I didn't really have the hodl mentality, right? The hold on for dear life. It was more like I want to make money, and I'm learning more and more about how this stuff works. So started mining, put together, a decent sized rig, and then started looking into trading bots and still trying to figure out how to make money. And let's say that went on for, I guess, all the way through 2020. And then at that point, I had a really good understanding of the fundamentals and purpose of what blockchain and cryptocurrency is all about. And then I discovered, I guess you would say, Ethereum DeFi, which was a new super cool way from my perspective to turn this into an income stream. I know you like, I'm sure you remember where I'd be excited because off of $1,000 we're making, you know, 10 to $10 a week or $50 a week, and you were like, wow, so impressive. And I was like, it's all about percentages. That's all that matters here is return on investment. And still, like, there wasn't a great, like, a lot of that stuff. If people remember Ethereum DeFi in the beginning, it was like you jump into a project, the APYs just get like smashed and you lose a lot of money often. The fees were growing, they weren't terrible. So then we were looking at, well, I like stumbled into like deeper and deeper into Twitter probably. And this thing called Pancake Swap was launching on Binance Smart Chain. So this would have been September of last year. And I was able to set up, like that MetaMask wallet for Binance Smart Chain, and I figured out how to move funds from Ethereum to BSC. And then, like, really right out of the gate, the first thing was like, holy cow, these fees are nothing. And I remember on Pancake Swap, I was farming cake, and I was just harvesting every hour because it was so cheap. And I know you don't know what I'm talking
I
about.
have no
but
idea
I'm
what
just
you're
giving
talking about.
the story.
This is a very deep, deep.
No, this is just the story here. And so it's still part of like where I got to today, I guess.
Okay. Can you dumb the story down for those like
Yeah.
myself?
So I figured out how to do DeFi on BSC and started making some nice return there, right? I was making, let's say, first my goal was $10 a day, then it was $50 a day, then it was $100 a day, and kind of kept growing. And I was really figuring out how do you avoid these rug pulls and scams and what's going to work well and what won't. And then really the catalyst for me was actually when we were having our baby. Because as the story goes, Lindsay's hospital wanted her to go back to work after 6 weeks. And Lindsay did not want to go back to work after 6 weeks. And
are we allowed to cuss on here?
Yeah, that's
Lindsay
fine.
said, fuck that.
Yeah.
I said, hell no.
And so it's like, okay, well, let's think here. How do we replace that income? And at the time, it was Thug Swap was, making good return on a number of different assets. And this is also right around the same time Jet Fuel was launching, I think. And it was for me, it was a math equation of, okay, if I need to make X amount of dollars per month to replace your income so we don't take that hit, then I'm going to go figure out how to do that. And then it all just kind of compounded from there. And then I got hooked up with Greg and Cammy on Twitter and a couple other guys, like Bill Cassidy. And we ended up launching BSC News. And then that obviously has been doing great. It's been a lot of fun. And that's kind of where we are now.
That was an enlightening journey. Thank you for sharing. I feel like I need to add that I
hated Bitcoin for 3 years.
I was the epitome of a crypto skeptic until you replaced my income. And then I was like, this is sweet. Let's continue down this path.
Yeah.
So my role here today, as much as I possibly can, is going to be playing the devil's advocate because, that's what I like to do. So
I didn't agree to that, but okay. I'll challenge the skeptic positions.
All right. Well, that's where I got the idea, because on Twitter, people are very skeptical. And we'll get there, but there's a lot of hate for cryptocurrency. There's a lot of, you can't pay your bills with crypto. And I want to be like, but that's neither here nor there. So let's take it back a little bit to some of the lingo that you're using that's totally over my head. Okay. So pretend that I'm 5 and you're explaining this to me like a child. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, correct?
Yes.
So how does the structure of all that work? So why don't I just let you explain it?
So I've seen it explained different ways. So Bitcoin is a blockchain. So it's a...
Wait a minute. I thought the blockchain is what the coins are built on.
No, the coin operates on the blockchain. So it started just from the base and work our way up.
Okay, fantastic.
And this is funny because like I've watched, Dave Portnoy when he was at the Winklevoss twins, and they gave him like the most ridiculous explanation of Bitcoin that obviously left Dave Portnoy even more confused than he was before, like even asked the question. So, because I remember listening to the description, I'm like, what? Right? Like, that was the most confusing thing ever. So, to me, this, like, the easiest explanation, and I don't think you could explain this to a 5-year-old, by the way. I don't think they have the mental capacity for it.
Sometimes I think Kenneth understands it better than I do.
Maybe. He just likes saying Bitcoin bull. So, Bitcoin is a blockchain. And what the blockchain is it's a decentralized ledger of information. And what that means is instead of let's say you have a ledger of information on Google Sheets.
Okay.
And every time there's any transaction done on this ledger, right? Because a ledger is just a record of transactions. So you just let's say we're entering in receipts from our bank account and use Google Sheets to budget. So every time there's a transaction in our bank account, you write down a timestamp of money moved from here to here, right? Now, what makes blockchain and in particular Bitcoin itself so powerful is that it's not just one person sitting in front of a computer with Google Sheets where they can change what happened, right? Like if you and I had a Google Sheets record of all our expenses, we could go back to last February and just change the data.
Correct.
Right. Now, what Bitcoin does, or really what a decentralized blockchain does, is it makes it pretty much more or less impossible to change prior data. Because instead of one Google Sheet document up, there's 10,000, right? And all of them are constantly agreeing on what happened in the past. So if let's say I sat there and I was like, I'm going to change the expense report last month, the other 9,000 computers would be like, that didn't happen, and they would wipe out my edits.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the whole idea behind decentralized finance or DeFi, right?
We'll get there.
So, okay.
Kind of. But
Maybe I'm interrupting, but what I want to know is what makes this new, and it's like revolutionary, right? What makes this revolutionary concept so appealing?
Okay. So now take the characteristics of that blockchain, right? And look at it like DeFi is basically a giant financial flea market, right?
Oh, that does not sound appealing.
It's very appealing. It's a marketplace where anyone in the world can go exchange assets together.
Okay.
And one of the big parts of this, of what blockchain produces, is what you can call trustless, meaning if you and I are exchanging something, we don't need to trust each other and know who each other are, because this blockchain that's constantly recording data guarantees us. Now, this doesn't get into the DeFi mechanics, but it gets into why I trust DeFi to work in the fundamentals, right? Okay. So if this blockchain is recording, always knows what's on my, what assets do I own in my wallet? What assets do you own in your wallet? And nobody can edit that because it is a decentralized ledger of information. So when you and I, if I do an exchange into a DeFi protocol and then I move something new into my ledger, I trust that the next time I pull up that ledger, that information is accurate, right? So right now, I guess in theory with a bank account, you trust that the bank has servers, right? Because all money is digital. Like when people say, and this is like a tangent, when people say you can't really touch cryptocurrency, so what the fuck, doesn't have real value. It's like, who the hell is using cash, right? When was we don't use cash? I guess we have cash if someone gives us a birthday card with $100 bill in it. But when I swipe my card, I'm trusting that a network of servers is transferring my value in my bank account to someone else's bank account. That's all that's happening. There's no exchange of money. It's just exchange of information.
Yeah. So I kind of understand why Bitcoin is there. It gets its value out of being a finite resource, right? Because it gets mined and then it gets
that's another part.
And
we haven't got there yet.
Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so let's just finish up this structure segment. So there's the blockchain itself, which let's use this flea market metaphor. The blockchain itself is the flea market, right? And all of the people, all the vendors in the flea market are the different coins?
No, not coins. Well, I guess coins, like tokens that are built on it, right? So to finish off the metaphor, anybody can build a application, like a use case, right? Whether it's a DeFi project or a gaming protocol or whatever. So that's the vendor showing up to the flea market. Then all the investors or users or whatever can show up and they can decide to interact with that application or that vendor. And the thing is, like, we don't need to, again, this is that trustless part. We don't need to trust very much. We do have to trust their code and that they're not scammers, but we don't have to trust that what exchange actually exchanged because we know it did. It's verified by the blockchain. And we don't really even have to trust the blockchain because it's that decentralization factor. Like, we trust Bank of America, right? Or we trust US Bank, or we trust these banks that every time I log in, the money that's in that bank account is accurate. So we're trusting an organization with computer servers. With cryptocurrency, with blockchain, we're not trusting an organization with servers. We're trusting this one server. Like, Bitcoin is basically a server. Ethereum is a server, but it's being verified by all these different parties that have. Yeah, okay, raise your hand. It's a server of information. Ledger server. Interchange some words here.
Okay, but here I am. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. Do I have, because pretend I'm a person. Well, pretend I'm a person who's a crypto hater. Do I have reason not to trust the banks? What's wrong with the banks?
I personally don't have the whole anti-bank mentality. Like, I don't think that I'm going to show up one day. Now, so here's what a bank can do. Actually, to your point, a bank can determine, because of whatever regulations they're following, that they need to freeze your account to find out what's going on. Right? You know who can freeze your account, your hardware wallet or your wallet or whatever? Nobody. Exactly. So, I mean, it's not like I have this distrust of banks and whatever. To me, the battle against traditional finance is a different battle when it comes to DeFi. It's not like there's some like crypto ethos people that just don't want that power and ability, right, and a centralized force or whatever. But at the same time, huge Bitcoin mining farms, get enough of them together, they can kind of, they do put updates and changes on Ethereum and on whatever. And so there's always some amount of centralization, that's the part that kind of concerns me. But that's a whole different thing.
Really? Interesting.
It's not like a real concern, but it's a hypothetical concern.
Okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay,
so we've covered a blockchain, a coin. Do we want to get into mining? I feel like that's really
so that's part of it. It's not that complicated, I don't think. So actually, what you said was Bitcoin has a finite supply. That's accurate. And so what mining is if you're willing to put your computing power towards being one of those verifiers of the network, you got to be paid to do that because you can't do it for free, right? You're using electricity and hardware investment and all that. So Bitcoin is produced on a set supply schedule, right? And which is why it's compared to mining. So, if you're mining gold, you're putting in resources and then the output is gold, right? So when you're mining Bitcoin, you're putting in resources, which is power, hardware, whatever. And the output is Bitcoin. And so you get paid Bitcoin. But the nice thing about it is that, comparing it to gold, there is no known supply of gold, right? What the Winklevoss twins said was, eventually Elon Musk will fly to asteroids that are full of gold, and it'll start raining gold down on the Earth, which will make gold effectively valueless.
The
right?
funny thing is, I feel like that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, it's probably real expensive. So it's just for fun. It's a counterintuitive Elon Musk investment, right? Because if he wanted to invest the money into getting to an asteroid to mine gold, when he brought that gold back, the gold would be worth less because there would be now more gold on planet Earth. So it's like you would never mine an asteroid because you'd be devaluing the thing you're trying to get. So it doesn't make any sense.
Sure. So, but what is actually happening when you're mining a coin?
So you're just basically, I think I'm probably the wrong person to ask this. Like, what's the computer actually doing?
Yeah.
It's just verifying a blockchain, verifying transactions. Now, how it does that, I don't know. Software. That smart people. It's named Satoshi Nakamoto. Or, with Ethereum, it's the same idea. It's just look at it as I couldn't get into the technicals of what's actually going on there. I just know that it's like a consensus network essentially, and it's creating blocks of consensus essentially and of history, right? Of
Okay.
records. They're creating records.
So if
of
you-
agreeing.
So if you do enough of that with whatever like you buy to do that, you create enough consensus, it rewards you with a piece of Bitcoin.
Yeah, kind of like every time there's a new block, all the mining pools are competing to be the one to verify the next block. It's like a race, right?
Oh, okay.
So whichever pool gets that next block is the one that gets the Bitcoin reward.
It's like the Great Gold Rush.
It is, yeah. Magic internet rush. Magic internet money rush.
Okay. All right. So where is crypto stored? I hear what is a wallet?
Okay, so crypto is actually stored in this ledger, right? The ledger records what wallet holds what. What a wallet does is it gives you access to that blockchain stored. Like it's not like all a wallet is you put in a seed phrase like a password basically that grants you access to move from to transfer funds. So you could have a hardware device within that. All the hardware device stores is that password, that seed phrase. It's not like it's actually storing, it's storing records of information or giving you access to records of information. So it's stored on chain, right? Because think about it, like I can take the password from that I loaded a wallet up in one spot for the seed phrase. I'm the same password for you for like easy understanding. And I can go put that same one in a different computer and have the same access point, right, to the same wallet.
So a wallet is just, is it like
It's
when
like
you,
gateway is how I look at it.
is it similar to when you log into your own bank account essentially, and you're able to see all of your different
That's a good way to look at it. Like the only difference is bank from or whatever bank is US Bank is storing that information and it's giving you an access point. So the blockchain is storing that information and the seed phrase is the access point.
I feel like I understand that on a surface level.
Yeah.
That's all I need to understand.
I don't even think there's, like when you get into the technicals of it all, like I actually don't really try all that hard to understand it all that deeply.
You just trust it. Oh, that's what's not. That's
It's trustless.
See, I'm not good at that.
Well, the
I
thing
need
is,
to know why.
Here's like with Bitcoin, like it's worked for 11 years, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
So I trust that when I type in that thing, it's going to show me what it's supposed to be showing me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so speaking of Bitcoin, working for 11 years, I also on the Twitter see talk of like Bitcoin versus Ethereum versus, is it called altcoins or like the little guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what are the differences between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the altcoins? Like, what is there an incentive to owning altcoins?
So the difference is always use case or investment use case or like thesis for investment, I guess. So like Binance Smart Chain, for example, is a blockchain that enables essentially like smart contracts, which lets people create these applications, these financial applications that we then interact with. Currently, there's nothing like that for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin DeFi will probably become a thing at some point, but it would be really expensive. And Bitcoin's purpose is not because there's higher transaction fees. So what Bitcoin brings to the table is the value is in the information and security. So if everyone knows the exact supply schedule, that's actually incredibly valuable alone, right? Because there's something to be said about like a predictive asset supply, because nothing hurts markets more than uncertainty. So there's an element to Bitcoin where there's 100% certainty. You know what the supply will be tomorrow.
It feels more stable, secure, reliable.
Right. So it is actually, and I don't want to even use the word like monetary supply because I don't look at Bitcoin as money at all. I think that's the incorrect view of it. But all money is value, right? It's a representation of labor is what money is. So I would almost say that. So I think I lost my train of thought. But Yeah, so Bitcoin, we know what the supply will be. It's a guarantee. So we know that unlike with the US dollar, the Fed makes decisions that they think is best for the overall US economy. And I'm not one of those people that has a problem with that. They got to do what they got to do, right? People complain about this stuff, but then it's like, do you really want a massive recession? Like, no. Like, they will do what they need to do. They will enact monetary policy to keep the United States moving forward. And like, the world needs that. So that is part of the deal. But that also means that, well, holding cash is from an investment standpoint, it's not an investment, right? Cash is a utility token if we look at it as a cryptocurrency. I love cash because, or just US dollars, not even cash. I'm just using cash like as a hypothetical term, but in your bank account, whatever, the thing you spend.
Right.
Its job is to buy you things,
Yes.
or its job is for you to receive value for labor, like from your job. But from there, storing it, unless you need immediate access or like having enough where something went wrong, you have access to money, storing value as US dollars is a guaranteed depreciating asset. It always loses value. It's guaranteed to.
Yeah.
So what Bitcoin provides is something where it's just like any other. It's like a commodity, right? So it's like a gold or a silver or whatever. Only it's like a gold or a silver, but with better characteristics. Where gold is not valuable because of jewelry and electronic use cases. Gold is valuable because enough people would like to hold gold as a way to hedge against inflation of dollars.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I want to come back to altcoins because I still don't fully understand that. But while we're on the subject,
well, I was going to get there next.
Okay. Let me just ask you this first. Is cryptocurrency intended to be used as a currency or an investment?
I think that cryptocurrency, and I wish they would have never named it cryptocurrency. They should have called it crypto assets, right?
There you go.
Because crypto is cryptography, so like that's just a defining word within itself. That's the technology with the stuff going on.
I've never heard that before. You just blew my mind, but okay.
Yeah, and then currency. Well, what is currency, right? Again, I've already defined currency as it's a medium of exchange, and it's a way to just represent the value that we all agree upon, right? So if I make $20 an hour doing a job making widgets, this is like so econ textbook. I'm a widget maker. I run a widget factory. This is like literally every econ textbook example. It's all about widgets.
Okay.
And the thing is, because widgets represent anything, right? You can make anything, but everything is a widget.
Fair enough.
Right? It doesn't matter if it's pencils or cars, right?
Okay.
You create widgets.
Got it.
So if I get paid to create widgets, the money they're paying me is the value of the widgets.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
They're not actually paying me the value of time. Like, yes, I value it as time, but what matters is what's the thing worth that I'm producing, right? That's where, like, a lot of people, when they're looking at how much they get paid, they say, like, I really deserve more. And it's like, well, what value are you creating?
So that's what incentivizes developers who are making cryptocurrency to make them valuable. Because if it's not inherently valuable, right, if it doesn't have actual value to the consumer in some way, then no one's going to use it.
Exactly. And so there has to be, use case. And so, like, use case for what's being produced. So, like, if you work in a pencil factory, most likely the value of your input isn't very high, right? Because in that pencil factory, it's probably machinery, and they just need someone that's going to like operate or just QC or whatever. And depending on how much value you contribute to the finished product and the value of the finished product, that will determine really. I don't know how I got here, but but then like if you're producing custom cars and you're one out of 5,000 people that can do it on the planet, then obviously you're the value of the product you're producing is much higher. Yeah.
Okay.
So therefore you get paid more.
Okay. But it can also be used as a currency, correct?
Well, what's a currency?
Well, like there's people.
If you said, I would love to get paid in apples because I love the shit out of apples, apple's a currency.
But can it pay your bills? Like someone said on Twitter, I don't think it's a currency until you can buy milk with it. Could I buy milk with my crypto?
If the milk seller accepts cryptocurrency, accepts Bitcoin, then yes, you can. But if they don't, then no, you can't.
Okay, but what I'm getting to is it can be exchanged for US dollars.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like
Go ahead.
I think people have this idea that cryptocurrency is just like magical internet money that doesn't actually exist. But in reality, it's quite easy from what I understand. I've never actually done it before, but you do it every week. So it's actually pretty easy, right? To exchange it for US dollars to pay your actual real life.
I can get cryptocurrency faster into my actual bank account in the form of dollars than I can any stock we're invested in. Any stock will take about 4 days. The clearing time to go from cryptocurrency to bank account is like 8 hours.
All right.
Now, also, if you have like a crypto.com card, you can turn your crypto into spendable cash in about 15 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would argue is, and this is where people get hung up on the word currency, like is, so yeah, there's obviously companies, you could buy a Tesla with Bitcoin. So let me ask you something. Or like at some stadiums now, they actually accept cryptocurrency as forms of payment. You can go buy concessions with cryptocurrency. So like my argument to them is, well, A, I think it's a stupid point to make. They're like, because the specific thing that I want to buy, I'm choosing to define this as a currency because it has to buy the thing I want it to buy. Like, okay, I challenge you to go to another country with your US dollars and go buy some shit. It's not going to fucking work. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to convert that to the currency they accept.
That makes sense.
Or vice versa. Someone comes here with like Russian rubles and they go into a convenience store and the person's like, I won't take that.
Yeah.
Right? However, you can go buy a Tesla with Bitcoin. So I doubt you could buy a Tesla with pesos right now online. So does that mean that a peso is not a currency? Like, no, it is.
Okay, but here's where my brain is going next. Okay. So it is kind of sort of a currency and kind of also an investment, right? You've told me the story of the $40,000 pizza or whatever it was.
$1 bajillion pizza.
Okay, yeah. So I'll have you tell the story, but also like, what would be the incentive to buy a Tesla for $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, whatever that is, only for like, that seems like a lot of Bitcoin to, if I had that much Bitcoin 2 or 3 years from now, wouldn't it be more valuable just right where it's at?
Depends. And then this is still like, it to me like that, like, yeah, so someone bought a pizza with Bitcoin and they spent however many 10,000 Bitcoins on their pizza, which is now like $1 million or whatever, right?
Yikes.
But also not yikes. So like for most of my jobs, I get paid in cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. So are we supposed to live on a box in the streets because our investment in crypto could be worth more later?
I don't know. Actually, now that you put it that way, it's kind of
like
to think about.
But this way, like, yes, you know what? So people have investment accounts. So let's just start looking at like stocks. People own stocks, and when stocks go up, because stocks always go up over time, that like if your job is a trader or something, or you're a swing trader, like, yeah, you cash out to go pay for your life expenses, right? It's not like you don't. So
the answer is it's both. It can serve whatever use makes the most sense for you.
Well, yeah, it's whatever, like, yeah, like if crypto goes up a lot, you should probably convert some to cash because that's just taking profit on the investment. And
minimalizing your risk.
Yeah. Or just
taking the risk off the table.
Exactly.
You can take out what you put in.
So like, is it a currency or is it an investment? I would say it's like all things where people get hung up on terminology, but it's just it's a store of value. Everything is a store of value, right? A TV is a store of value. Mm-hmm. It's all, and it's whatever makes sense in your personal financial position. So like maybe we would buy a Tesla with Bitcoin, because we don't have a lot of cash, right? We don't hold a lot of cash. We hold primarily investments. And so instead of selling the Bitcoin to get the cash to buy the Tesla, you can just give them the Bitcoin. It just makes it easier, right? So obviously, like on our day-to-day expenses, that's not practical because it's still a volatile investment, like all investments. So you need to use money, but
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's like, yeah, you would buy stuff with Bitcoin because otherwise you have to sell it for cash to buy the stuff you want.
Okay. So I feel like this is a good place to segue back into the altcoins. So how does one decide which crypto or coin or whatever is the most valuable for them to put their dollars into?
I guess current and future use case, right? So the cryptos are only going to be worth as much as people are willing to pay for it and how much demand there is for it.
Okay, can we talk about shitcoins?
Yeah.
I feel like certain coins, who I will not mention by name, only go up and down because of the publicity that they receive.
Yeah, it's like a casino.
So is that kind of like a worth? Like I think it's really dumb to put money into a coin that's only going quote unquote to the moon because someone is tweeting about it. Am I stupid for feeling that way?
We're talking about Dogecoin. Let's get into Dogecoin.
Let's go there.
Dogecoin is interesting.
I have a love-hate relationship with
So
Dogecoin.
part of it is, a huge part is like gamblers, right? It's like, let's see how high we can pump this thing. I want to make money. But I'm starting to, so like, I think I told you, like we had bought it, like, let's say like a year ago, then we sold it for like 4 cents. And I was like, I'm a genius. I sold it for 4 cents. It's going to zero. And then now it's like 60 cents. So who was the asshole, right? But at the end of the day, it's a blockchain. And use cases could be developed from it, or it could be accepted at more places as forms of payment.
Mm-hmm.
So I think where I and a lot of people miss the boat or miss something interesting is if there's a guy, we don't even need to mention his name. There's a guy on Twitter. He's got a big following.
Big following.
Huge
following.
He's one of the top 2 richest people on the planet.
Sure.
Who was able to take a car from the company that he owns and strap it to the rocket from the company that he owns and shoot it into outer space, is tweeting about something. We don't know what his plan is. Is he going to integrate it into Tesla technology? Is he going to do something with it? I don't know.
Wouldn't that be illegal for him to do that if he's pumping the coin on Twitter?
He's allowed to say whatever he wants.
That feels like...
Is there an ethics conundrum? I mean, there may be an ethics conundrum if he isn't planning on doing something with it. If he was planning on doing something with it, then I would think that what he's doing makes a lot of sense.
I feel like we're getting into conspiracy territory here.
I just think that when obviously Musk is eccentric and likes to have
Mr.
fun.
Musk. Yeah.
I see nothing wrong with it. I love it. And he's having fun. He gets to do whatever the hell he wants. He shoots rockets into space, right? Like, do whatever the fuck he wants. He's making the biggest impact on global warming out of anybody on the planet via all the electric stuff he works on. So this guy can do whatever he wants.
I just don't like it on principle. I think it's dumb. And I hate to be the person leaving money on the table, but also it's annoying.
Well, you just feel annoyed because I sold it 4 cents, 60 cents. But I don't hate on anything. And the reason I don't hate on anything is because of my general crypto thesis from the very beginning was, and I wrote an article about this, right? We don't know what people are going to develop in the future. And to act like we do know is a major, false arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what's going to happen to Dogecoin. And if people want to take a bet on, it's going to the moon and whatever, they could be right.
Okay. And I think you've made an interesting point because there's something to be said for spreading your, your value amongst
diversification.
Yeah. Thank you. Mm-hmm. See, you're so smart. Because I think you tried to explain this to me once, and I won't do as good of a job as you do, but basically Bitcoin has come so far because I used to be a huge proponent of why are you putting money into these coins when you should be putting it into Bitcoin? Blah, 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 blah. Well, Bitcoin has already come a long way And so if you invest it into other coins, there's more room for them to grow.
Markets of scale is the terminology.
Yeah.
Where
That thing.
for Bitcoin to double, there needs to be a lot more value investment than, well, now at this point, for Doge to double, still way less than Bitcoin, but it grew a lot. It got a ton of investment behind it. Who knows? Maybe Elon Musk owns $1 billion worth of Dogecoin. He freaking might. But yeah, so I think when you build your crypto portfolio, you want to have some room for growth, right? Everything has its purpose.
Do you have a suggestion? Like
I don't
what
wanna give
percentage?
suggestions.
Percentage you can't do
Whatever your
percentage.
risk profile is.
That's fair. Yeah.
So, I think, and as people's portfolios grows, that risk profile changes.
So people who have bigger room for risk could explore some of the smaller coins with less weight on their shoulders.
Mhm.
People who have very little to risk should probably stick to stuff that's pretty well developed.
Yeah, like Ethereum, Bitcoin, BNB,
Okay,
whatever.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm a person who has, the means to be looking at all the little guys. What do I look for in one of the little guys?
You look for a potential use case. So use case drives demand. It's all about demand. So you want something where people want to buy it because it's useful, right? But things are useful in different ways. Again, Bitcoin is useful not as a way to go buy milk. It's a terrible financial instrument to buy milk with.
But you could if you wanted to.
The fee to buy the milk will cost more than the milk, right? It would be a foolish thing. But to think that that's the only use case for Bitcoin, in my opinion, makes you an idiot, right? It's like you're latching onto this. If it's not a currency, there's no reason to buy it. To me, it just means the person doesn't understand it, right? So the Bitcoin use case is a really, really good hedge against inflation and a bet into incredibly secure technology that future people will make even more useful than today, right?
So if what makes Bitcoin so valuable is that it's so well established, among other things, but that's one of the things, then are you essentially taking a bet on all these other little guys, hoping that they become well established? Because if they don't, then it's kind of pointless and useless and you threw away your money?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm essentially saying if I hold now, of course, at the same time, not everything is a long-term hold, right? So I may look at something that says this serves a really good use that the market likes right now, and I want to earn from it, for example, in liquidity pools.
Okay, but here's my issue. What is a use? You keep saying use case, this, that, the other. What is a use? Give me a finite example of what I'm looking for.
Okay, so let's look at DeFi. And I'll just I'm going to pick an Ethereum project. That way I don't pull any favoritism in BSC.
Okay.
So we will look at Aave, or Aave, however it's pronounced, AAVE. It is a borrowing and lending market. So the use
like a bank.
Exactly, a decentralized bank.
Okay.
For you to earn interest on stuff that you lend to the market, or to provide liquidity in the form of lending and then borrow to go do something else with your capital while you keep your exposure to the underlying assets that you hold.
Interesting.
So the use case is exactly that, right? People have reasons that they want to borrow. Other people have reasons that just want to park some funds and earn some interest. So that project has a very good fundamental use case.
We didn't talk about contracts, but what you're talking about is how they write the contracts determines the use or the economics or whatever of the token, right?
Yeah, so there's always different schemes, right? Economic schemes that they build into these. Because ultimately each project wants to attract people to use their project. So there's constantly, it's almost like a constant one-upping thing, right? Like someone launches something, the next person forks that and tries to make it a little better. The next person forks that or takes a combination of concepts and brings them together.
So a use or a use case could in theory be anything. Like anything. So we have banks. What are other?
So I'm going to challenge you here.
Okay.
Let's look at blockchain as the internet.
Okay.
Now let's go back in time to 1995. All you could do was send emails back and forth.
Right.
And someone could be saying, which someone did in a Newsweek article, saying this is the stupidest shit ever, right? big scam. All these companies launching it's a big scam. But why would anyone ever use this for anything?
Now internet runs the world. I guess that's where I'm going is.
So we don't know the use cases.
They're almost infinite. Like,
it is infinite.
in theory, you could replace our current economic system entirely.
And that's just one use case.
Well, but the whole economic system covers all the use cases, right?
No. So if you're talking about like financial markets, that's one use case where blockchain is more efficient and it's more secure than existing systems. That's one use case. But in terms of the economy, I guess you're right. Where like, let's say supply chain management is another big one. So right now, companies, there's shipping companies, there's receiving companies, there's suppliers, there's vendors, there's all these different market participants. And typically they have to, I'm not an expert in supply chain management, but I would imagine that, let's look at fish, right? And this is already actually a real use case that is like a fundamental to why I think this will be a thing.
Okay.
So let's say you're a fisherman, you're a fisherwoman.
What kind of fish am I fishing?
You're a fisher person, you're catching tuna. And
Tuna?
So you catch the tuna.
How about something pretty?
You take your boats. So no one's eating seahorses. This is about
for pets.
No, we're not talking about pets. This is
That's
ocean.
abhorrent.
This is ocean to table.
Fair.
So you catch tuna. You take it to the dock, and I'm assuming most likely, especially if you're like an independent fisher person, you basically get paid by some big supply company probably to, here's my catch, and they give you your money. Then that fish needs to be processed, right? Like it's not like the tuna we buy at the store is just a giant tuna.
So it goes to warehouses.
Werehorse. Stuck on the seahorse thing. So so the fish gets processed, and then it changes hands again, right? Then it goes to a grocery store probably next, right? And then there's trucking companies in between all this that have to move it from point A to point B. Then I go to the store and I buy it, and I've got there's always a sell by date, right? This is where this really comes in handy. So right now let's say there's 5 different companies participating into the management of that one fish fillet that came all the way from the ocean.
My little tuna baby.
Yeah, the tuna went from the ocean into our smoker, right?
So sad.
That's what happened to this tuna.
Okay.
And so the question is, how do we know where? So we get a package like fresh Atlantic tuna, right? Whatever it is, we don't know where it came from. The grocery store doesn't really know where it came from. Everyone's trusting where it came from. But this is not a trustless network, right? This is literally, we have to assume that every tuna market participant from point A to point B, or from point A to point Z, was telling the truth. Now, what if that tuna could be somehow scanned in at point A, so it's caught? Essentially, it becomes its own individual token. So a piece of information.
A tuna token.
It's a tuna token. And when we get it on our end, we could scan that and see what happened to it, right? So it's on this open database, a completely open, trusted database.
Okay.
That's blockchain. Like, because I can't look at the database of what's a tuna company, or
I don't.
Let's just go with Price Chopper, right?
Okay.
I can't look at Price Chopper's database of information, right? That's why would they share that with me?
And look at their.
Why would they want me to see the fact that most likely they're relabeling shit to sell it, right? I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well, okay. Allegedly,
we're just totally making this up.
theoretically.
So let's just call it grocery store A.
Let's not get sued by Price Chopper.
Yeah. So Price Chopper is excellent. It's a great grocery store. I'm a big fan. It's family owned and operated. I think. I don't know.
Some family owns it.
So what it comes down to is why are supply chain databases not public? I'm a consumer and I want to know where my tuna came from, or my bread, or this. I want to know that information. And also, then think about in terms of the grocery store, right? They're buying from somebody. don't you think they want to know where this came from to make sure they're telling the truth?
I
Right?
don't know. I feel like most people trust other people. I'm not that skeptical.
No, it's not about skepticism. Oh, now I'm talking about efficiency, right? So the grocery store that's selling it to you accesses the same database as everyone else. Everyone's accessing the same data
It's
points.
transparency.
It's transparency and it's efficient movement of information, which is what blockchain is, right? Because think about it. Let's go back to the very beginning. Store of value is
I'm a little confused.
okay. So cryptocurrency is all information, right?
Isn't
It's all
Let's
information.
talk
It's
about
not
that some
physical.
more.
It's digital information.
that's what is I feel like going to confuse me. So it's digital information. Is it coded? Would you have to understand the code to be able to read the
No, because
inventory?
so when I log into
whatever.
when I open my wallet and I see that I have a Bitcoin,
Mhm.
right? That's just information, right? It's information that anyone can
But where
access.
am I seeing all of the information about my tuna, where it came from, and all that?
You'd have to have a front end user interface to see it,
But then you have to trust the user interface.
or the blockchain, yeah, if you're smart enough, probably you can audit it and make sure that tuna coin token A, which represents the tuna in our house, we could follow its origin all the way to distribution and purchase.
Hmm.
So, and then okay, like look at medical records.
Mhm.
How do you what if you could tokenize your medical history
This
so
is
that
$1 million
yeah,
idea.
it's already being done, right? So instead of all these different hospital systems that don't communicate,
Mhm.
you create a US healthcare blockchain, or it's built on Ethereum probably or something like that. And the transmission of information becomes 1,000 times more efficient. Because right now that is it. So you have all these industries where they're incredibly inefficient for 2021.
So they have different software. It's like getting one hand to talk to the other hand isn't.
It's all just one hand, right? Yeah. It's all just one fluid thing. And so yeah, these use cases are endless. This would then you get into like NFTs.
Couldn't someone, let's say I develop a health record, medical record, blockchain token thing. Okay. So couldn't someone else develop another one and then we have the same issue? Or there's more than one and
No, because all you have to do is make it so that I bet you there will be multiple developed, but something I don't know I forget the exact term, but you make it so it's accessible on various blockchains and different applications and whatever. So, you know, I would think that if a healthcare system, let's say Cerner decided we're going to go build this blockchain version of what we have in real life, like our software system, they wanted it like as a closed system so no one else could access it. Well, they just rebuilt their same software, right? So it actually wouldn't be useful and it wouldn't have any additional value. But then the company that said we're going to make an open source system so every healthcare chain in the United States or in the world can tap into it, that has value.
is that possible?
Of course, it's all possible.
Open source meaning it's free to the companies, the healthcare companies themselves,
Yeah, like
which would be a huge incentive for them to, because I'm sure that electronic medical records cost millions of dollars.
let's
to
use
healthcare systems.
the already occurring version of this. All of these DeFi protocols are just financial products, basically, or financial systems, or offering types of banking services, and they don't have to recreate the wheel every time they do it. They just tap into the existing network that people are already using. So it makes it incredibly cheap and efficient and this is a big thing about, and this is what's I think is going to rapidly transform, like you said, our whole economy. Because typically, like if I want to start a new bank, I just can't. Right? Think how much of an investment fund you need to do that with, the regulatory requirements, the blah 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 blah. Now, someone that wants to build a lending protocol can just do it, right? So barrier to entry is really low, which also means barrier to innovation is really low.
Well, there's some barrier to entry. I mean, to develop something.
Yeah, you either need to be a developer or have the funds to pay a developer, but that's not the same thing as creating in the off-chain world, a similar system.
Okay, so this leads me to another thing that I wanted to talk about, and then I'll ask you one more question, and then we'll wrap up. So let's talk about, we talked about development, how there's a small barrier to entry, but it's much smaller than any that exists currently in our traditional economy. So can we talk about all of the ways that crypto is, you're able to make money in crypto tangentially to cryptocurrency without necessarily investing in it yourself? So you become a crypto developer, you become an artist for all of these different, what are they,
NFT
personalities,
platforms.
or I don't know, NFTs.
Yeah.
I don't even want to dive into NFTs because I still have no idea what that is or how it works. I kind of have an idea of how it works, but it's beyond my comprehension.
So yeah, of course you could be a trader, right? And you can create income from trading. You could work for all the emerging projects and companies that are building.
So it's going to stimulate our economy in that way as well, because there's
It's job creation, yeah.
global job creation.
And I actually, there's a guy named Ivan on Tech, and he does he's real funny, like real ridiculous YouTube personality. And he puts on this, he has like a workshop on how kind of like, I think it's like elementary level coding, right? Or something like that. And his whole sales pitch is like, have you ever heard the saying stack sats?
No.
So a Satoshi is like the smallest way to break down a Bitcoin. Like once Satoshi is
Oh,
like
that's cute.
very cute. Yeah.
Satoshi.
So the saying is stacking sats is like always be accruing more Bitcoin, and he has this whole pitch of the best way to stack sats is to do something and get paid in Bitcoin, or to get paid in dollars and buy Bitcoin or whatever. And I actually fundamentally agree with that, because trading didn't work out for me. Not that I tried that hard, but I tried hard enough to know that it's a crapshoot for most people.
So what do you do instead?
Well, you either save money and invest, or you get a job in crypto where you get paid in crypto.
But aren't you also making money from something called liquidity?
So you're talking about actual ways to use crypto to make money.
That's not. No, I'm talking about what you're talking about.
So you could take Bitcoin, lend it into one of these financial markets, right?
Yeah.
You just earn Bitcoin as interest on your Bitcoin. You don't have to do anything. So that's one way.
From what I understand, that's more so what you focus on now, right? So trading is actual.
Yeah, I don't. Of course, we change positions, right? So trade in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yes. So
the
getting paid.
So there's that. Then there's once you have cryptocurrency, you can provide it as liquidity to DeFi markets, right? So that's how you help sustain that big flea market, right? The liquidity providers are the ones that make it all possible. And so in return for that, you're almost providing a service, right? Your liquidity is at work.
Is that lower risk than investing in an actual coin itself?
Well, you have to own the coin to do that.
Oh, okay.
So it's only, the risk is associated to the platform to make sure that it's not a scam or there's no bugs or whatever. And then also in the coins that you choose to provide liquidity with. So if you choose a shitty project and you provide its token as liquidity, you're probably just going to lose a lot of money. But you could take stable coins, it's pegged to the dollar. You can provide that as liquidity with Bitcoin. So you've got dollars and you've got Bitcoin, right? Those are both assets that you could probably feel pretty good about long term. And earn interest and fees and stuff.
Gotcha. So there's get paid for an actual job in Bitcoin, which there's
a job in Bitcoin. You're gonna call the Bitcoin company?
No. I mean for an actual. What I meant was a real world job. So there's people who do real world, like the football player who got his bonus, his signing bonus in Bitcoin, right? Yes. And then there's people who get jobs that are related to cryptocurrency. So the writers for BSC News. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the coolest part, because they're literally all over the world. So you're creating opportunities for people. And so
remember we talked about a barrier to entry? Mm-hmm. This is, the whole crypto space is pretty much remote. Even Coinbase, I think, announced that they were just getting rid of offices. Mm-hmm. Because there's something fundamentally cool with the fact
You're
that
such a dad.
fundamentally cool.
Fundamentally cool.
That like so BSC News has we work with people in 5 continents.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is pretty amazing.
it is. And so that bringing jobs to parts of the planet that have this is free market at its finest, in my opinion. So like typically what really what's traditionally happened is there's a country where there's no jobs, no money, no infrastructure, and so a government starts going in and basically like negotiating deals. Like so the US government was notorious for this for a long time, where it's like, we're gonna help boost your economy, but in exchange, like we're gonna get bananas really fucking cheap from your country.
Yeah.
Right. And then it ends up just killing their economy. It destroys them.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, how about we actually just bring work opportunities everywhere all at once?
Isn't that cool? I feel like that's something that you guys should feel. I mean, excuse me while I humble brag on your awesome not corporation, but company.
Yeah, we don't care where people live. We want talent.
But I think that's really cool that you guys.
So the thing about this, we could have someone that lives in a country that has little access to good jobs. We pay them, right? And then they can purchase assets, provide those to lending markets, earn interest. So then they get access to financial instruments that they literally have never had access to before.
Yeah. Which leads me into my final question before I want to wrap up. Conspiracy theory. Okay. So one of the major differences between crypto and traditional banks or stock markets is the barrier to entry, the big guy, David versus Goliath, right? So why don't banks want to see, or why didn't they? Now, they're all jumping on the bandwagon. But before, they were anti-cryptocurrency. And why is that?
So this is actually very interesting. So the fundamental understanding of the David and Goliath story is often wrong. So this is actually a Malcolm Gladwell historical context constructed theory, right? Or thesis. Not theory, it's like a thesis.
Okay. We're going to pretend I knew you were going this way.
You had no idea.
I had no idea.
I actually love the David and Goliath story because it's actually not what people think it is.
Okay.
So, I'll explain this part, but then I'll bring it into the banks, and we can even apply it to like Netflix and Blockbuster.
Yay.
So yeah.
I feel like I've heard that story recently.
This is a great way to wrap up this podcast,
Okay,
really, because I love this. So the traditional understanding of David and Goliath was that Goliath was this just warrior monster, right? Monster warrior that David had no chance of beating. David was like this little shepherd boy. Goliath had all this gear on, and it's just like, there's no way David's going to beat Goliath. But then why would David fight him? Right? Let's just, so it's like, ask the obvious question. Why would David fight Goliath? Like, if
in immediate danger, did he have to?
Well, what happened, the setup was the Israelite army was about to fight like a Amalekite army. I think it's
I understand history about as well as I understand.
Yeah, right.
Crypto. I just outed myself. Sorry, continue.
So, these two armies were about to fight each other, and it was going to be bloody, and there was going to be a lot of life lost.
Okay.
So basically, Goliath went down, and this was actually common in the past, in which this is like something we should like try to bring back. It was basically a one-on-one battle. Whoever wanted to save lives, right?
Oh,
and to save
like gladiators, sort of.
Yeah, and so they basically decided everyone send their best fighter, and let's just dig it out, and then we don't go fight in this ravine, and everybody fucking dies.
Sure.
So Goliath goes down there. He's well known. He just murders everyone, right? And so none of the like main fighters of the Israelite army wanted to take this guy on. Because think about it, like, let's say there was some like warrior in our backyard, and then it's like, all right, let's say I'm like,
send the dog,
right?
Don't go.
So like, let's say and then it's like, okay, and he's like, either send out your best fighter, or I bring my army, and like it's on, right? And let's say I'm just like, I'm a good fighter or something, which I'm not, but let's say that I am. I'm like, I'm not gonna go fight that guy. Like he's gonna kill me, right?
Right.
He's gonna kill me.
Okay.
So why would I fight him?
Sure.
So let's ask the question: Why would David fight him?
Because he was going to cheat.
No, he wasn't going to cheat.
I don't know. Tell me. Answer the question.
Okay, here's the answer. So David was incredibly good with the sling. And a sling was like, think about how do we fight wars today, right? We shoot missiles.
Mm-hmm.
A sling at the time was that equivalent of like, you throw a rock, incredibly high speed with deadly accuracy, right? So like getting hit in the head or in a weak spot with one of these rocks just lights out and you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's change the game, right? Let's say that fighter's in our backyard and I'm a marksman and I'll be like, hey, I'll fight you. And I can stand 100 feet away from him and just kill him, right? So David says, I'll fight him. Now, why? No, so David was a shepherd. How was he such a good slinger? He had to protect his flock from wild animals. So he's out in his daily profession, slinging whatever wild animals to protect his flock, right, or sheep or whatever he had, with deadly accuracy, right? So what do you think is easier to hit in the head, like a giant human or some nimble cheetah on the prowl trying to get your sheep? I don't know what animals they
whatever
right?
wild animals they have.
So David says, okay, so Goliath is this huge mountain of a man, has this armor, blah, 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 blah. David just walks up and from a football field away, hits him right between the eyes with a rock. Goliath's dead. So it's actually one of the most anticlimactic stories, really, of any like war history. Because I see that as literally like, this bare knuckle boxer goes up to a marksman and is like, come fight me. And the marksman's like, all right, I'll fight you. He just shoots him in the head with a bullet.
I mean,
right?
It's still pretty cool though.
So basically, what does this teach us? So there's other parts to it though. So Goliath was incredibly slow. He was big. He was a great fighter, hand-to-hand combat. Nobody could take him down. But you remove that part of it, he's incredibly slow. He couldn't see very well. The prediction is that he had this disease called like gargantuism or something. It's like a real thing where people are like 7'5", right? And that's why he was like so gigantic. And typically, if you have that disease, like you can't see well, you can't hear well, because he actually, biblically, historically, he says something like, "Where are you? Why can't I see you?" Like calling him a coward. And it's like he can only see so far, so he couldn't even see David. Right, so not only is he going up against this expert marksman of the time, but he couldn't even see him. So he's calling him a coward. You won't even come out here, right? And so now let's get into what's going on. So really David had every advantage in that fight and just toppled him. And Goliath didn't even know it.
So the banks.
You know what I'm getting at here? The
Goliath.
banks are Goliath. They have underlying assumptions that what they do is the best way to do it. It's the only way to do it. It's how we do it, right? And guess what banks can't do? They can't be nimble. They're huge. Think about Blockbuster and Netflix. Blockbuster had this assumption that people just love coming to our stores on a Friday night to buy M&Ms and rent their movie. It's it's an American family pastime. They really underestimated the laziness of Americans. And just what,
here.
Right? So Netflix says, hey, we have this technology. We're going to deliver stuff right to people's homes. And Blockbuster's like, no way, that's stupid. Right? Because they have these underlying assumptions of what they believe is right.
And Netflix even offered to partner with Blockbuster, right?
I don't know if I think they tried to sell themselves.
Yeah, and Blockbuster was like,
the story is that they laughed them out of the meeting. They literally laughed them out because of their underlying assumptions. So if you look at who's been the biggest critics of cryptocurrency in the last few years, it's the CEOs of banks. Jamie Dimon, for one, was like, if I catch an employee talking about Bitcoin, I'll fire you. What are they doing now? They're working on Bitcoin products for their customers, right? So they came in with underlying assumptions, and they were wrong. And I think they're continuing to be wrong because what they don't realize is that other piece of the puzzle, which is the low barrier to entry of decentralized finance. So, and the bureaucracy that these banks have is going to end up being their downfall. The downfall for Goliath, the thing that made him such a good fighter, right? His sheer size ended up being his downfall because it came with the other issues. He can't see well. He can't move at all. Right, incredibly slow. Like the biblical story really paints the picture of this lumbering giant. Yeah, and so banks are lumbering giants. Right now, they're just figuring out Bitcoin, right? That's not even DeFi. So decentralized finance, like if they were smart, if I were a bank, I would be trying to figure out how do I build protocols on something like Ethereum or Binance Smart Chain so I can leverage all my customer deposits. Because banks have what DeFi needs, which is a shitload of liquidity.
Mhm.
And so what banks are seeing is they're seeing all these their customers' money leave to places like Coinbase. So like, oh my God, they're going to Coinbase to buy Bitcoin. That's what we need to offer. We got to make sure they can buy Bitcoin. But that's not the right move at all, because it doesn't stop at Bitcoin. The money may flow into Bitcoin and move into DeFi, right? So the banks they're Goliath. They're slow. They are arrogant, and this is just traditional business history, right? Like, what did Amazon do? I'm sure no mall owner ever believed that this little online bookstore would ever be a threat.
Mm.
And then it's like all of a sudden it hits a tipping point, right? And then there's no coming back.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's I think that tipping point has already come and gone with the billions of dollars in DeFi.
It's almost like their own bias is what's going to cripple them, because they've spent so much time in denial when the past 10 years, what they should have been doing is really trying to wrap their heads around it and understand instead of looking at all the faults with it in the hopes that no one else would see the advantages, in the hopes that that would give them the edge.
Their edge is liquidity, right? Their edge is they have all the money.
When what they should have been doing is looking at all of the attractive features of DeFi and cryptocurrency and adopting those and adapting and innovating. And as we learned with Blockbuster, if you don't innovate.
Yeah, there'll be a documentary called The Last US Bank, right? It'll be in Alaska, because
that might be a stretch.
I mean, yeah, I think banks will be fine because people have a need for home loans, right? That are not backed. So like in DeFi, currently in DeFi, you can only take a loan off against your own assets. So no one yet has figured out how to bring in the credit rating process or whatever. Or just, it's not tied in yet. But eventually that will be tied in, where you'll be able to take a traditional loan out. That's, who knows, maybe that's years away, maybe. Mm-hmm. Or maybe that's what the banks start doing is they build DeFi, like there's no reason why banks couldn't, and they will. Certain banks will do this stuff, and those are the ones that really survive. And I bet you it's going to be the smaller ones, like the local credit union type banks are the ones that really will have the ability to change and adjust and adopt new technology. I don't think them. Yeah, I don't think the big banks are going to have a lot of ability to move quickly. They're the Goliath, right? That makes
sense.
Yeah.
So in our scenarios of outcomes, there really kind of is. I mean, there's this inevitable, either cryptocurrency is going to, well, it kind of already has revolutionized how the economy works, or it's all going to be completely devalued and drop to nothing, and it will be worthless. And I think based off of our conversations and what I understand of it, and just the evidence in front of us of what we're seeing happen with it, the chances that, it drops to nothing are looking smaller and smaller. And I think there's a lot of people who think that once the United States regulates it, they're going to regulate, and I just think this, they're going to regulate the heck out of it, and then it's going to be worthless. And people are going to be like, oh, well, I guess I'll go back to my bank or whatever. But one of the conversations that we've had, or that you've, challenged me on, is really something that's holding people out, that's keeping people from putting dollars into it, is not knowing what will happen with regulation. And regulation almost legitimizes it, and
it does
entices more of the people who have more money to put their money there.
I think right now the people that are really willing to use this DeFi stuff, they're the risk takers. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, there is that slight, but I kind of think non-existent concern that crypto actually gets regulated to death, right? To actual death, meaning outlaw, blah, blah, blah. I don't think that's really physically possible. And even U.S. regulators of like, how do you do that?
Yeah, because it has so much momentum.
Yeah. So I think what does end up happening is there becomes regulatory clarity to where the less risky investors are like, all right, I am now I'm on board because that risk factor has dropped. And then, and oftentimes those are big funds with a lot of capital.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, so I think you're completely right there, where the regulation will make it so more investors feel comfortable. So more regulation is better.
You're here.
Yeah.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. So is this just a part one of the multiple series?
Yeah, I feel like our next episode needs to be like diving into more of the terminology, like the trading bots and the things that liquidity pairing and things that I'm just like totally mind blown by that I cannot wrap my brain around. How do you feel about that?
Let's do it.
Staking.
So for
yield
now,
farming.
let's call this podcast a wrap. You did an excellent job hosting.
Thank
Very
you,
good
sir.
line of questioning.
Thank you for helping me sort of kind of understand for the people out there. Okay, in conclusion, for real, in conclusion, for the people out there who are like me, who have no idea where to even start, let's wrap up with 3 pieces of advice, your 3 most valuable pieces of advice to people who are just getting started in cryptocurrency.
3 pieces of advice.
Short and sweet.
Okay. Only put in what you can afford to lose to start, for sure.
Okay.
That's a good rule of thumb for any investment.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, just buy Bitcoin. Right. If you're just gambling, just buy some Bitcoin.
There you go.
And number 3 is really spend some time learning about it, understanding not exactly what it is, but like why. I think the why questions are important to understand. And to drop your own assumptions, because when you come into this space with little to no assumptions, you can really start to see what the space has to offer. And also, number 4, like don't chase bullshit, pump and dumps. unless that's you're having fun and you're gambling, and that's fine.
No, who likes to gamble? I have never won money at the casino.
I'm not.
Just throwing that out there.
I think this has better odds than the casino sometimes, but that's not. Yeah, like don't just jump on a hype token. Like really look into what you're buying.
All right. So maybe next time we can talk about what to look for in knowing if something is a hype token. Is that what you call it?
Sure.
A hype token or not?
I don't think we know that, but we'll get into that next time.
Sounds good.